hands up, otherwise I'll probably start firing away with questions.
I'm just curious how this film came about. What was the start of it?
Can I answer the question? Hello everyone, I'm Director Domenico Di Lillo.
Whoop, 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 whoop.
And basically answering the question, I was invited by Tony to record the event, and I took the opportunity. Like, I personally felt understood and somehow represented by the way they were talking about it, and I felt like somehow inspired that they bring their own personal experience somehow and portray it in like converting a drama way, and I was kind of amazed the way they can easily talk about their own experience. So it was, for me, it was kind of I was very curious to understand how they go into it, how they talk about the issue, which I'm not able to do it because I'm feeling comfortable to express myself through film. If I need to express myself through voice, I can't. I mean, I'm not able to do it. But I was like, how they do it? Like, how they get on stage and speak about things that is like, you know, it's heavy stuff, and that's how it come up. Like, this is how, yeah.
In terms of your directorial sort of skill, I mean, did you when you had the opportunity to do it, did you have anything in mind in terms of how you were going to film it? Was it going to be sort of like a fly on the wall?
Right. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, no. I was just there and I was just recording. I was just amazed because I'm not an expert of NHS and I don't know anything behind that. I don't know the behind the scene. No. I was just say, okay, what's going on here? And I think for me, it's more like an excuse. Filmmaking is an excuse to understand. Okay, what's to understand a topic I don't know. Let's find out together somehow. And it was like, I was recording it, somehow was like, maybe this one is a topic that is important, so let's record. And then on the editing side, it was more like, what's happening? Like, how can I put the narrative together? Like, I didn't know any of that. I discovered a lot of stuff during the editing, for example. You know, I didn't understand, for example, I didn't know like, how complex it was to get, therapies. I didn't know any of that. I didn't know the story of them. I just like find out during the editing. For me, it's fascinating. It's interesting, and get me close as a human to someone that is suffering, and I think it's important to understand that at the end of the day we all emotion and everything. The pain unifies people. Pain, because pain is something, is the strongest emotion, it's more honest, it's something is very difficult to hide, and you understand that someone is in pain only if you are in pain. You know what I'm saying? You don't understand by the eyes, and you don't look the skin, you don't look how it looks, the background, you're just looking in the eyes. I think this is what is wonderful about this group, and yeah.
I have one question regarding, and you've got a good representation here in terms of the origins, and obviously Tony can also contribute too. I know he's filming, but
I can hold it.
I'm intrigued to know a bit more about the origins and how you all got involved. I think Keith quite eloquently said in the film what motivated him, but the rest of it, how do you feel that transition, that feeling of becoming participants, activists for change and being members of the consortium? Who wants to go first?
Okay. So for me, I'll give you some context about me. So I actually work in a mental health hospital. I'm what's known as an occupational therapist assistant, and I solely work with men. And I've been doing that for about 10 years now, and before that I worked in CAMS in Brent for another maybe 12, 15 years. So I have quite a great experience of working with young people and adults. And it was really being a voice of justice, because there's a lot of things that happen that I've witnessed inside lot of institutions that are not really discussed or brushed under the carpet. So it's just, you know, with my fellow peers, you know, being able to be a voice of the voiceless, and use my experience to say, okay, this scenario does happen, this is unlikely. So just using my skills to be a social advocate. Keith?
Yes, and likewise, I mean, I got into the BMC because it gave me a platform to, as some of you might have witnessed, to discuss real life issues that can affect each and every one of us, regardless of who you are. But in this country, for example, we do seem to have a taboo about so many issues, and 1 in 3 of us will suffer from some form of mental health. If you've got a broken arm, oh, you broke your arm, no problem, you get sympathy. Yeah. If you've got a mental health condition, people want to run away from you if you've got some kind of lurgus or some disease. But yet, it should be the opposite way in some ways. And being at my nephew, when he committed suicide, and unfortunately another member of my family committed suicide, both men. And suicide, to a degree, can be prevented from us on the outside. But when you're in that situation, sometimes you don't see that little light at the end of the tunnel. But there's not enough support. There's not enough positivity that is discussed within an open forum. And to me, being with the BMC has given me a platform, so I've got a voice. Most people might know Speaker's Corner is it Hyde Park?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've never stood on one of those platforms, but I'm standing on a BMC platform, and I will discuss subjects which people may think are a bit harsh or a bit taboo or shouldn't be discussed. I will discuss them because they need to be discussed. However, how are we ever going to support each other and make this world a better place if we do not discuss things around mental health, suicide, self-harm, and I have a platform to do it, and I will continue to do it. Hence why, even today, they were speaking on the radio about policing schools, and still the amount of children, and I say children because if you're age 18 or under, you are still classed as a child, that are not stop and search, but strip and search. It's absolutely, as far as I'm concerned, disgusting. And even the ones, I think there was 35 people under the age of 12 that are stripped and searched without even their parents there. I mean, it shouldn't be happening. Not so much this country, it shouldn't happen at all, anywhere in the world.
Anywhere, yeah.
But it's happening, it's brushed under the carpet, and I'm not here about black, white, green or purple. However, it does happen to a lot of people and young people of colour, without any justification. And I will stand on that platform and speak till I can not speak no more about the injustice, because there's a way of doing things the right way, but some of these things are not done the right way, and it's wrong. So the BMC has given me a platform to discuss things like that.
Yeah, can I add there is like the platform gives us that, you know, that authority to have those conversations, those difficult conversations. We've been in presence of Public Health England, we've been Public Health Maudsley, we delivered training to the Maudsley, to their psychiatrists around racism and stuff like that, which went really well. So we're able to affect change, have those conversations and say, okay, you know, we are a force, an entity, and we're not going to go away. We're going to continue to campaign on these social justice that affect men, mental well-being, and have that conversation. No matter how difficult some people or some commissioners or some public health body find it difficult.
Thank you. Gentlemen.
I had a feeling Chatham was looking my way. Hello everyone, I'm one of the newest members of the BMC. And I had no expectations. I walked in a room of a group of black men. And I'll be honest, I had no expectations. And I came across the BMC by accident. conversation with my cousin one day, and he said, you know, why don't you go down to the BMC? I said, BM who? In Brixton. Yeah, I know Brixton. I was brought up in Brixton. Yeah, I'm not going to Brixton. I went to Brixton. I walked into a room with a group of black guys, and I'm just sitting there thinking, do you know, I mean, what is this all about? I began like this, and throughout the time went by, I find I was relaxed, and I just really was immersed in every single one that was in the room that I could actually relate to. Just felt like I've known everyone in a long time. So my experience comes from growing up as a child, 5 boys, no parents, abandonment issues, trauma issues. I'm partially deaf as well. I grew up in isolation. And it was just me and my 4 other brothers. We brought ourselves up. Social care back then, didn't understand what that was all about. And we kind of floated through the system. We got through school, kind of undetected. But for me, growing up later on, I've noticed there were certain patterns and behaviours. I said, I really like that. What is that all about? I don't understand that. Why do I behave in such a way that, you know, I was angry. I was upset. I was angry at my mum. She passed away at 36. She couldn't hear me, or but she couldn't answer me back. My dad was somewhere I didn't know where, and it just got to a point where, do I give up? Lost my hearing, went into isolation, came out of it, and it was not only until, believe it or not, the last 5 years, I woke up one day and I said, you know something, I'm gonna rebuild. This is not who I am. This is who I used to be. This is what I want to be. And I opened that door, embraced my demons. Don't get me wrong, it was scary. But I stood in that room. Yes, I did run out, but I ran back in again. But I refused to be defeated. And I went into this self-rebuilding. I didn't trust anyone. I was attracted to females. Females were attracted to me. Why? They were. As you can see, I get this behaviour from, I blame the, that is where I get my drama skills from. So I was really, I didn't respect myself as an individual. I didn't respect others. And I said, why am I like that? Why do I treat people like that? Why do I don't trust anyone? Why don't I want people to come close to me? And that really bothered me. I've grown up into a man. So anyway, I started the rebuilding process. And the rebuilding process started off with conversation with elders. And it started with my dad. And my dad gave me the worst advice ever, which I took on board really with a heavy heart. He said to me one day, son, don't bother with them. Nobody wants a man that's disabled. And I went, really? Is that true? So imagine I was crumbled, went away, head down, thinking, I'm just one of those people that no one's gonna want or care about. So that played in my mind for some years. And as I said, one day I went into the dark room and refused to want to feel those feelings. We grew up, started rebuilding, start searching, and I was like to myself, they got this someone else like me that's out there. And I was meeting people who had similar experiences, some not as traumatic as mine. And I set about learning the reason for my impairment, hearing impairment, was because I was born premature, and that had an impact on my hearing impairment. So I was lucky, could have been worse. So So I went to find out about that. So I got the truth behind that as to why, because that was in the back of my mind. Why have I got hearing impairment? It's not hereditary. Then it went to the rebuilding. I had to kind of step away from people what I call friends, and I went into it. I went to do some research going back to as a child, and I asked for those people that are still living in the family, what was mum like? What was dad like? What was I like growing up as a child? Anything that you've seen that you recognise? And it all stems back to trauma, being a premature child. You are disconnected from your mother in the womb, believe it or not. And I later found out recently, I didn't know that genetically, if a mum had postnatal depression after giving birth, I didn't understand that was. And that is what my mum felt. So hence why there's no connection between myself as a baby with my mother. And that is where the abandonment and isolation came from. And I only found this out a week ago, would you believe? I'm 56. My mum passed away when I was 12. So it's not bad news, but it's happy news. It's something that I'd never realised before, something else that I've learned. And fast forward, I'm searching, I want to share, I'm finding new things about my trauma, I'm finding things about abandonment, I'm learning about what isolation is all about, I'm learning about how trauma can affect the individual, and I went as far as Google, I went as far as America, not literally, but Google can take you so far. So then, lo and behold, it's true what they say, right? Is that the answers are always in front of you. Always. And we just don't see the answers. And lo and behold, I got to a place in my life where I felt, right, I can put on that t-shirt with the S on. Here I am, I want to go out there, I'm knowledgeable, I'm a person who I want to be. And I want to share my experience. And lo and behold, it was right in the middle of Brixton, amongst these guys that are sitting here who I credit to, because I can be in a place where I can be me and they respect my views and opinions, and I'm treated for the person that I am. So that's my story. Thanks for being patient.
Who's next?
So I lost track what I was going to say.
Could have been that important.
I suppose the question I always tend to ask myself is, who am I? And am I who I say I am? And those are very strong questions for me. So when I talk about BMC or any space like that, it's about personal development and what I can take from that development and also expand outside the outside world. Because sometimes you learn something within a certain space, but the growth starts when you take it from that space outside. So in a sense, the journey that I've been through has kind of helped me immensely in terms of my relationship with my partner, my relationship with my brother, my friends here, also my brothers here. So in a sense, that's what the BMC and spaces like that have done to me. And it's a massive improvement. I've seen a change in myself. I'm more relaxed. I can have a conversation with anybody, anywhere, anytime. And you know, growing up in this country, well, for me, racism has always been a construct. And saying something that reflects always like a chip on your shoulder, well, that chip is no longer there. So for me, it's a sense of freedom to express myself any which way I can. That's what it's brought up for me.
Thank you.
Can you hear me at the back?
Yeah.
You're not at the back. For me, alright, let me start my story. How did I get to this group? The actual day, I was in Stockwell, picking up cigarettes off the floor, thinking about whether or not I would have to go
to a party to fuel my drugs, ketamine and cocaine. And I'm walking down the road, and then on this phone box was, I can't remember the exact words, but I was for some reason drawn to it. So, oh, it's acting. Gave it to my key work. I was like, yeah, I thought I might do that because it will keep me off the streets, stop me thinking the way I feel. And then, yeah, being one, I wouldn't say one of the founding members, but one of the oldest members, but one of the youngest members. So I initially came here because I was like, I'm a person who likes to express themselves in a constructive way, because I've kind of always been aware within myself that there are things that I want to express, there are things I want to discuss, but a lot of people, or people that were in my group, in my vicinity, were unable to be empathetic or understand my emotional needs. And I think that's where a lot of my suicidal ideation came from. So when I came to the group, I was just literally focused on expressing my experiences that I'd been through in a constructive way, rather than shouting at a police officer or a therapist or someone through a cage trying to explain my life and feeling anxiety at the time. So this group has probably saved my life quite a few times.
Yes.
I wouldn't lie. Yeah, I'm prone to, like, my favourite bridges are Battersea and Vauxhall, mostly because on Battersea Bridge no one bothers you. I was actually wrestled to the ground by 2 random people walking past me. Had to wait 20 minutes for the police, but that's another story. But I found that expressing my story within this group helped me to deal with a lot of my my stress and my woes, because one of the plays which we did back in the day was based a lot on what I had gone through and how I tried to reach out to people about my life and about where I was and not getting any help, and then me at the end actually trying to hang myself. But yeah, if I didn't have this group, like sometimes when I have thoughts in my head, if I didn't have people like Lloyd, Shaka, this guy here, who, like, I'm not a happy person, but when I'm with my brothers, the happiness is bombarded onto me, and every Monday night afterwards, I literally keep that with me for the whole week until I see my therapist on Thursday. So that's how I got into the group, and I like to dive into my characters because I know my characters are almost like a reflection of the life that I'm actually living, but we just add a little bit of humour in there. But yeah, that's it.
You made it.
So,
Yes.
thank you.
You made it. You made it. You made it. You made it.
Julie.
Oh gosh. Wow. I've been a carer from primary school. And so the reality of living with mental health, working in services that I was faced to support people who wanted to talk about what was happening to them. And so I was able to begin to think about, how do you meet your needs as somebody living with mental illness, and then supporting people with mental illness and having to who are experiencing how the system is responding to them, and the stigma and discrimination. And one of the things that I have learned about black men is that the black men have been incarcerated in our prisons and in our mental institutions. So they've been missing. Very few are free. Very few. But they're stories still haven't been told. So it doesn't matter if you're doing the Count Me In census from 2000 and whatever it was. It doesn't matter what evidence there is. What is actually learnt from that research, from these discussions, to actually improve their experiences, that they can have better health, better quality of life, and seen as humane. So I am in this. I work in the community as an activist, empowering people to all learn, all of us to learn. Well, what's mental health? How do we understand it? How do I pick up on that signs of distress? How do I generate my own empathy and love that I can walk to make sure I support people? Because at that point, when you got a call for help, and the help is a policeman, yeah, that's trauma. So I'm working with a community that doesn't understand why they have to call the police. Because when they call the duty social worker, they tell you to call the police. And we already know that you're at higher risk of death coming into contact with the police. You're more likely to come into mental health services via the police, via the court system. So when I see the young men in the local services, the local crews, and the only time they're getting access is like a court order. So it's still not about promoting their good mental health. It's a court order. So nobody's actually promoting the mental health and well-being of our young black men, much less the women. And so the challenge is that our men are dying and they're witnessing the death of each other. That for me brings me into this space. I am, well, you see me gesticulating. I love drama and telling the story. I am not about the frameworks society wants you to use to tell their story. Because over 50 years and more of research, they still can't tell the story how we want to tell the story. That's not what can be heard. And so right up until this morning, I'm in suicide prevention. What can we do to prevent suicide? But didn't you watch the play? What did you learn? So I'm here to support and educate, but love. The guys know I'm here for real. I couldn't realize I spoke so much. You know? But the passion to bring about real change. I am tenacious, but I also need more influence. But it's coming. This sister, in her poetry, I'll say this. She said, "Who will pass you a tissue?" You got into this because of humanity, we share pain. But the pain of the black man is not seen as pain. It's not seen as pain. He is dehumanized, and his pain and his story is ignored. And that's why when the men can come and express themselves and tell their story from their lens, from their language, their journey, there is nothing more exciting and powerful about that therapy And that therapy isn't written in the Eurocentric approach to those models that deny their voices. So whether you want to call me a politician, I don't business, the voice of black men must be heard.
Fire! 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 Fire!